Welcome to Talking Sock. Drew Wilson has brought to life some of puppetry's greatest heroes, with roles as Joey and Topthorn in Warhorse, to the title role in Dead Puppet Society's Lazer Beak Man.
To play a superhero is the best.
Joining me by correspondence from Enmore in Sydney, this actor, writer and puppeteer teaches us to trust our inner weirdo and realise there is a hero in us all.
Everybody has something within them that is unique and worth people paying attention to.
Join Drew and I now here on Talking Sock. Welcome to Talking Sock, your one-stop shop for all things puppetry, arts and practitioners. My name is Pete Davidson, and today I am joined from Enmore in Sydney, New South Wales by the wonderful puppeteer Drew Wilson. Welcome, Drew, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here.
Drew, why puppets?
I watched, I was listening to one of your podcasts today, and I was thinking about this question, and I knew this question was coming up. Why puppets? I mean, there is an absolute joy in using puppets, so they do satisfy that part of performing. I love puppets. Why puppets? I didn't choose puppets. Puppets chose me. I suppose you must hear that a lot, but it's true. I trained as an actor, and I have dabbled with puppetry every now and then, but never really took it seriously as a platform to do art and to be in front of an audience. I got cast in a show that they trained me in puppetry, and I've fallen in love with it, and I've used it as much as possible ever since.
You got cast in a show. The show. You got cast in Warhorse. You got cast not only in Warhorse, but you were Joey and Topthorn in Warhorse in the 2013, 2012?
Yeah. So we opened on midnight on New Year's Eve 2012 down in Melbourne. That was our opening night. And then we had a 7-month season that went from Melbourne to Sydney to Brisbane.
Unbelievable. So it was a midnight showing of Warhorse Australia.
Well, it was a 7:30 showing, but We did the show, we performed it and had our interval and everything, and they did like the cast announcement, and then the fireworks happened for midnight. So it was all thrown together in one big New Year's Eve party. It was like performing a show, open a show to 2,000 people, and then go and celebrate that with all your friends that you've been spending 3 months training with. Yeah.
I feel like that's just like Drew Wilson getting, admitted to puppetry, fireworks and fanfare, and here we are, you've arrived. That is such a cool origin story. Hey, wow. So I first met you briefly at a workshop with Dead Puppet Society down here in Melbourne. It was just before I saw you perform as Mr. Proud in Stormboy at MTC. The reason I want to bring this up is because it was such a beautiful Australian story, translated really brilliantly for the stage with Dead Puppet Society's beautiful signature puppets, which are laser cut wooden puppets that were on a trigger and a large sort of beam. And my favorite moment was actually the saddest moment in the story, where the leading pelican, Mr. Percival, dies. And there's this beautiful moment when the puppet is left behind by the puppeteer, and the puppeteer breaks character just for a moment to personally stroke Stormboy's face before leaving the stage. And I think the reason I just died when I saw this was because we realized that in that moment, the puppeteer is literally the soul of that puppet. And I want to hear your reflections on working on a show like that, one that is a drama, because a lot of puppetry is comedy, but this is a drama. This is a really dramatic, beautiful story. Can you tell me about that experience and where you were in that time of your puppetry journey?
I think you hit the nail on the head, the idea that the puppeteer is the soul of the puppet. The joy of that show was having permission to be an absolute idiot on stage. Pelicans they're hilarious. They're absolute, these pelicans in particular, the way it's written, they're obnoxious creatures that just all of their motivations come around when are they going to eat next. It was like they just cause chaos on stage. We had a blast, absolute blast, coming up with the messiness and the silliness and the noises of those pelicans. It was a lot of ourselves and our clowning thrown into those puppets. So I think that when it comes to the soul of the puppet that you're identifying with, a lot of that was, we got full permission to lean into that. And coupled with, the beautiful story, it's a really interesting dynamic that while the story was so serious, but at the same time so wholesome and about the family dynamic, it was a beautiful coupling with these crazy pelicans that lifted the story in another way. They were another element to themselves on stage. It was utter joy.
I'm just thinking about what Kayla Cabanas, who I know is a friend of yours and I know who also worked on Warhorse, said about, you know, these incredibly physical tasks of lifting a horse and making the horse move. I think about the Pelican and Storm Boy. They were heavy, man. And there's, you know, a number of really quite intense physical labor that goes into the puppetry work. So what kind of, you know, physicality does a puppeteer need to be in order to actually do a dead puppet show?
Yeah, those puppets were heavy. There is an element of strength that is needed to manipulate some puppets. There are some puppets that are really tiny and light. There's an incredible amount of dexterity that you can use in order to create nuance within that puppet. And then you get other puppets that you have to find that dexterity but couple it with strength. Those pelicans in particular, they had an incredible amount of force that was needed to make the wings open, for instance, which means there is a lot of effort, a lot of strength required. There were 3 of us doing the pelicans, and often the best combination we found for making the pelicans work were 2 people. So you could have one person working on just the wings and the other person working on the nuance of the head. To do both together was quite a feat. And whenever that did happen in the show, it was kept to a minimum, but often it was in small bursts. And those pelicans are only on stage for a short amount of time. And so we could put the effort into that, which was really good to do because you've got all these things going on. You do want to show off these puppets. You do want to give the audience what these puppets can do. So if they're too difficult to manipulate, the audience can't get the most out of them. So yeah, it is that coupling of the potential for the puppet mixed with having the strength in order to do it.
And in terms of dexterity, I mean, I remember that there were scenes where Storm Boy is literally playing catch with the pelican and throwing a ball into the mouth, which you think about that, that's an incredible amount of dexterity coupled with stress.
Yeah, we rehearse that a lot. It's almost like practice, really. Part of that as well is working with what they call the 4th puppeteer. So often if there's 3 people on a puppet, the 4th puppeteer is the person that interacts with the puppet to help sell the idea that the puppet is being on stage.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. It's a cool thing. That was especially important in Warhorse with the relationship with Albert. But with Stormboy in particular, we had to practice a lot the throwing of the fish and the throwing of the tennis ball in order to get the pelican to catch those items, because there's a way you can set it up so that it makes it easier for us to do it. A lot can go wrong, and it's quite amazing to drop the ball literally on stage while you've got a bunch of people watching. Fortunately, I was never the one that needed to catch anything, so it never really fell on my shoulders in order to do that magic trick. Yeah.
And you've said previously that you are most comfortable with the Bonraku style of puppetry that is most often employed in dead puppet shows in its own manner. And you've done 3 shows with them now, I think, maybe 4. So can you tell me what it is about Bonraku that you enjoy and what you've learned from it? Bonraku
is probably, I think the reason I enjoy it is because it's the only one that I've done. I haven't really done anything else. I was trained in Bunraku. That was with the Warhorse training. They trained us for that show. That's kind of where my experience came from. I really want to have a play with all the different kinds of puppets. I'm pretty hungry. I'm a bit of a sponge when it comes to experience, when it comes to the art form. I've never had any formal training, so for me, it's all been on the job. And every job should, I believe, challenge you and teach you something. So I'm always open to trying more and more stuff. But Bunraku, that's what I've worked with. That's what I know the best.
If you were to access formal training, where do you think you'd go?
Oh, that's a big question. I'd have to leave Australia. When borders open, I can hopefully get over to London to do some work with the Curious School. I did recently get a Mike Walsh Fellowship, which helps fund that trip. So that will help hopefully give me some overseas training in the hope that I can bring that back to Australia and, enrich the puppetry world here. I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope and dream, right? You come home and everybody does puppetry, and you've got a school and everyone's all these puppeteers all training together and it's hunky dory and everyone has an absolute blast and we just watch puppet shows for the rest of our lives. But the reality is it's going to be many, many years until that happens, if ever. But yeah, probably London is probably where I'm going to look. But I do want to look at what is going on the continent in Europe. I'd love to go and have a look at the Bunraku stuff that's going on in Japan.
Oh, yes.
Although the bunraku that I do is it's like a watered down version of it. I know they take it very seriously over there, and there's a huge respect for the art form. It would be a very different thing. I mean, in the traditional sense, it takes 30 years to master a bunraku puppet. You spend 10 years in each different position on the puppet, and I don't have that much time. I want to do more performing. I can't wait. I don't know what's on offer to go to Japan, to go in and just do like a crash course.
Don't know. Like I went to Japan in 2018, and there is a touring company that does bunraku puppetry and does do workshops and the like. But it seems that they only travel. When they're traveling, there is no real access to their workshops or education. And then last year, when I met a Japanese puppeteer by the name of Nozomi Nagai, and she is beautiful. And she's been studying puppetry 15 years under the same master, and she's 35 and is still a student. And she created this beautiful puppet herself, hand carved, called Onoko. And it is, a walkabout puppet that she attaches to herself. And I think that it is very much a culture of, training from a master, finding that master, learning from that master, as opposed to a formal puppetry school. But God, I'd love to go to Japan and do just puppets. That would be unreal. Hey,
it would be incredible, right? Oh, it's a culture and interrogation of the art form that we don't have in Australia. I find that fascinating. And I think there's so much to learn from how other people do it, because we're free reign here in Australia. So much changes so quickly. And I feel like in a way we do have to fight a lot for any resources we can in order to move forward. So I feel like, it only makes sense that we go overseas to seek what we want and what we need, because it's certainly, if you're not getting it where you are, then a lot of puppeteers I know are very creative, inspired people. They can't sit still for a long time. So if it's not being presented to them here in Australia, then they will go elsewhere in order to get what they need.
Do you think that you could quantify what an Australian style of puppetry looks like or is?
Oh, I don't think I can. I would like us to really push the art form. I think that there is, I really think we are an inspired group of individuals. Even just listening to your other episodes on the podcast, I've done my research, Pete.
That makes me so happy.
I find, that's, it's my pleasure. There's such great podcasts, and I'm very thankful to be here. I think I've already said that. But what I'm trying to say is that everyone that you've had so far, I think, really does love the industry, and everyone has their own unique way of working that they've found. And I think that is in itself what we as Australians can trust in the puppetry world, is that you've got some incredible minds that are working on creating pieces that mean something, and whatever their audience is, they're making it for those people. It's an egoless institution that we all work in. So no matter what comes out, everybody's making the best work they can. I think it will be inspired. It will be inspired inherently because they're inspired to make it. Hopefully it advances. And I'm seeing more and more interesting and diverse little ways of working, because we're now more connected than ever, especially with what we can see online. So it's only a matter, we're all sponges as well. So everything that happens overseas will be inspired by that, and then eventually we'll come up with something that inspires those overseas as well.
I really love that answer. And I love also the addition of the idea that what we might like in sort of a recognizable style of puppetry, we definitely give back in a very particular form of vernacular when it comes to storytelling. I think you can really identify Australian cinema, and thus I think you can really identify Australian theatre, and particularly Australian puppet theatre. And I guess the reason I'm mentioning Dead Puppets so much is because I feel like they are at the pinnacle of that kind of storytelling. Those stories are incredible. One of them, actually, most recently, that we got to see was Dead Puppet Society team alongside with the artist Tim Sharp and his amazing mother, Judy Sharp, in the revival of the 2016 show, Lazer Beak Man, at the Sydney Festival. And it was
Aren't they beautiful?
Oh, I die. They're such fabulous people.
I love those two. And that show was completely made for them. If it wasn't for Tim and his imagination, and if it wasn't for Judy and her love for her son, then that show wouldn't have happened. I was brought in late into the whole development anyway. So it already had a life of its own, thanks to those two and Nick and Dave working together with an incredible team of people from Brisbane Festival. I think LeBoit was involved. There was an incredible number of companies, venues, collaborators, all wanting that piece to work, including the artists, the puppeteers themselves, and then Ballpark Music making the music, and then the Justin doing all the visuals. There was so much going on that people really wanted it to work for those two, for Tim and Judy. I came on late. I did play Lazer Beak Man in the remount of it, really. A bit of a tour they created last year. So I fortunately had the resources, the material to work with. Like, the show had already been created, so there was a blueprint there to inhabit. And I did meet Tim in 2016 when the show was first made, because I did see it up in Brisbane, and I remember meeting Tim then. And he blew me away, and his openness and generosity was inspiring in itself, and I could see there was an absolute heart in the piece. And so when I got offered to jump in to play Lazer Beak Man, I couldn't say no. Also, there was his drawings and everything. There was so much content for me to absorb in order to inspire me to fill that character with everything that it needed and deserved. So it was a joy, a lot of fun.
For those of us who don't know, who are our listeners, Tim Sharp is an artist who is living with autism and has been sort of a pioneer of ability and autism in Australia. And I'd really like to know from you, Drew, what was it like to play his hero?
To play a superhero is the best. I love heroes. I think they make me happy. I love musing on what makes a hero a hero. And Lazer Beak Man, his journey in that story is so beautiful. Like, he is a hero. It's thrust upon him, and he's got all his friends, and there's an expectation that he holds. His friends are all fighting for the loudest voice, and he himself in this show doesn't speak. So he's a witness a lot of the time, but he's given space to have an opinion. Yeah, it's an absolute joy. To puppeteer a character that doesn't talk while everyone else around him is talking is an interesting thing. And I suppose it puts the pressure on you to make the gestures and the character readable to the audience, because he doesn't have words to express himself. Every other character is saying what they think, but he has to watch and be present. He's the character that takes the audience through the whole journey. That was the challenge, I think, with Lazer Beak Man, to make him as engaging as the other characters, to fill that role. I think it was an incredibly successful show. I really do. And I think it comes down to the fact that everyone was working together. I mean, like, I fortunately wasn't the only one working on Lazer Beak Man. I did have a team of people. Like, there were often 2 or 3 people working together. Matt Seary was often working with me on the feet of the puppet. So us two together had such full reign. Making a superhero fly is an example of, like, the joy that you can have with the puppet, because you do get a chance to imagine what it would be like to soar through the air. You can't do that as an actor because you plan it on the ground unless you've got a harness on you or a CGI. But with a puppet, you can make it happen and fully believe in it. And if you're there, then the audience is there with you. And yeah, that's where the joy is and I mean, he can shoot lasers, right? Like that, like all of those things. He's got superpowers. Yeah. He also has, like, a beautiful journey as well. Like, he loses his powers, and he's got to earn the trust of all these people back. So the story has got a complexity to it as well that, as an actor, I enjoy, because the character has a full arc that you get to explore as well. All the things, all the emotions, all of the, the trials and the errors, and all of that are in the text as well.
What do you think the moral of the story is?
It's got a really kick-ass song. Oh, the moral of the story. Oh, yeah, totally. You do you. Everyone's a hero. Yeah. What it is to be a hero is totally inside you. Lazer Beak Man had it all along. And everybody has something within them that is unique and worth people paying attention to and worth valuing. Yeah. And that's not just Lazer Beak Man's story. Like, that's everybody's journey in that play. Black Sheep goes through a similar thing where he's completely neglected by all the other characters in the world, and he fights against what it is that makes him unique. He's constantly told that he's nobody. But it turns out that he has an extraordinary power, which is being invisible is a good thing. And he can get away with things. He can help save the day by turning invisible. So that's a cool little superpower that he has. I mean, we all have little superpowers. Yeah.
We sure do. So how important do you think a show like Lazer Beak Man is for inclusivity in Australian arts and culture?
Oh, yeah, very important. The whole show was about inclusivity. It's about celebrating people for who they are. The music and the life and love that is in the whole piece, in the philosophy of it. The one thing that they did really beautifully with the show, and it ties into that philosophy of inclusivity, is they made as many performances as possible inclusive to audiences to watch. The Auslan interpreted ones, we had relaxed performances where they soften a lot of the intensive lighting and sound and things like that. The show in itself and how it was presented to audiences was adapted at times to make it inclusive. So it wasn't just about the philosophy behind it in its creation, but how audiences see it. I think that is important. I think most theatre is starting to do that a little bit more. I think there's way more to go. I would love it if every show had Auslan interpreters, or were relaxed performances, because I don't think in my own world I would love it for no matter who you are, anyone can watch a show at any time. There shouldn't be a specific performance for certain audience members in order to get it. Every show should be accessible. But we're making our way slowly, one show at a time, especially because Tim is such and Judy were powerhousing that show. It couldn't help but promote the idea of inclusivity, because it wouldn't happen if they weren't there.
Yeah, I cannot tell you how much I agree with that statement, that the industry is slowly moving towards an era of inclusivity. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about the industry. And you're one of the only puppeteers I know who is both a commercial actor as well as a puppeteer, who not only manages to successfully maintain that duality, but who is managed by a talent agency that respects and fosters both sides of you. And it sounds like the relationship between you and your management has been really important to you throughout your career. My prior relationship with talent agencies has been dubious. And I think a lot of people can relate, particularly actors and young people in the industry. So how has the industry changed when it comes to agencies, and how did you come to find that relationship work out with you and Smith & Jones?
I can't speak for other agencies other than the ones I know, the ones that I have been represented by. Smith & Jones is beautiful. I think it's really important that your relationship with your agent is rich and open. They need to know you, who you are, and you need to know who they are and what they're about. Fortunately for me and David and Tanya at Smith & Jones, hello, how's it going, guys? Shout out to my agents. I really love those two. I think that there is a trust between us and an understanding between us and a celebration of who we are. They know who I am and the work that I like to do. They also know the work that I'm probably suited for, as well as I could be challenged with as well. I trust them in what they do. I think David also, he's got experience with being a puppeteer in the past. So he understands what it's like to be an actor, but also have worked with puppets. And so he gets me in that sense. So it's talking a lot about my agent, but what I'm trying to get to is that your relationship with your agent is everything. As long as they understand you and what you want out of this industry, then they will fight for that and they'll defend you.
But I think it does. It takes one to know one a little bit, with the puppetry, and the idea that someone can appreciate it from a level of not seeing it. I feel like, I feel like that's when it works. But we both have had experiences where it has gone wrong, and so I guess my question for you is, how do you know when it's gone wrong?
It's a gut thing. It really is a gut thing. But I was without an agent for about a year before I signed with Smith & Jones. And previous to that, I was with another agency that it did fall apart. I think I learned a lot about that, about myself. And what I realized is that they had a very different idea about who I was compared to what I thought I was. And I've really figured out a lot about myself as an actor, as a performer, as a human being since graduating from drama school, which is when I signed with my original agent. And I think there was probably a conflict there between who I am as a person versus who they wanted me to be. I mean, that's a lot to learn, especially for young actors in the industry. It's an incredibly intimidating industry, and it's a very ruthless industry. Often us as performers, a bunch of things can happen. Like, I suppose you're in a very vulnerable position as a young actor in the industry. You're listening to a lot of people who know a lot more about it than you do, and you want people to like you a lot. At the end of the day, whether or not people like you doesn't matter. What really does matter is whether or not you are happy, whether or not you are proud of the work that you make. And unfortunately, with my old agent, a lot of the work that I was proud of wasn't seen in the same light by them. So there are alarm bells that would pop up. But I think where I've come and what I've learned from that is to really trust in who I am as a person, as a performer, as an individual. And having an agent that sees that and trusts in that too and believes in that is an incredibly important and powerful thing to have on your side.
How did you find resilience in the industry? Like when it doesn't, when it's not working out, or when there's audition after audition after audition, what do you do to maintain that resilience and push forward?
Rejection is rejection. The sting of rejection never goes away. I suppose it is that whole idea, stubbornness maybe, or the idea that when it comes to the art and the craft that you are putting out there, if what you put out there is your best work, then you cannot ever really be upset with what you've done. That's not fair on yourself. So I suppose if you are honest with the work that you create and also honest with yourself about it. Like if you've done a bad job, you've done a bad job, but learn from it as well. Like move on, keep going. I suppose you do just get a thicker skin. When people say no, often the translation is you're just not right for the role rather than you're bad at what you did. That can be also another thing, like just reframing the logic around why choices are made in the industry. I mean, I suppose I've been in the industry for long enough to realize that there are far more factors that go into a person getting a role than just what you present in, like what you can bring as an actor. You're just one piece of the puzzle. A lot of choices are made by people, by things out of your control. It could even come down to how you sound, what you look like. It could be who the other actor is. It could be that they've already asked somebody else to do it, but they're just waiting for them to get back. And so they're just going to cover their bases and audition a bunch of other people just in case this person never accepts their first offer. There's a whole number of things that go into play with casting and getting jobs. So I suppose when it comes down to rejections, if you take it personally every time, then you're going to be a wreck. And I know a lot of people that do get beaten up by that. I mean, all you can do as a fellow actor is to support them. And I mean, we're all in this together. I hate that phrase. Can I just say? It's really thrown around a lot now that we're in Corona times. But like, as much as possible, the community of actors needs to support each other. There's no better feeling than when one of my friends gets a role. Like, I just want to celebrate them. And I'd rather someone I know or someone I love and someone I believe in get the role over me. If I can't have it, then yeah, they can have it. It is a community, and it can, depending on the person, get competitive, but people genuinely want to do the best they can. They want to survive. They want to do the best they can.
In maintaining that duality as an actor and a puppeteer, I mean, we also spoke about briefly before the sort of pigeonholing that the industry likes to do to us. And you are someone who, on the surface, wouldn't strike a casting agent as a D&D master, cross-stitching, fitness coach, actor, puppeteer who also writes. There is, like with all people, so much more that meets the eye. So how is that description for you, huh?
Thank you. You just dropped a lot. I haven't talked about any of those things, and you just dropped them all in one sentence. I love it.
Yeah, strap in, folks. Has being seen for who you are and what you do been a challenge for you?
Yeah, I think it is. I would love it if people knew all that about me. Like, I could have that on a calling card and just like hand it to people. Like,
I will make you a badge.
Please do. I would love that. For those of you at home, I am doing this interview in front of a quilt that my mother made. So she taught me how to sew when I was a young kid. So there we go. There's something new about me too. Stereotypes are really helpful. They are really helpful when it comes to understanding like a general broad view of what something could be. When it comes to character descriptions or casting, stereotypes are really good for selling an idea. This is what we're looking for. I love to challenge that a little bit. I'm not the typical kind of person to step forward into an audition. And I mean, in Australia, we Home and Away and Neighbours, there are a lot of stereotypes within those shows. Not to say they're all stereotypes, but there are a lot of that. And we do see a lot of beautiful people on screen, even in the States. Like, it's just a generally quite a thing to see often. I don't know. I like to challenge that. I like to walk in there and just be who I am, because I don't know, if I'm going to do a show, like I haven't had a role on Home and Away, but if I do get a role on Home and Away, sometimes those jobs go for a long time and you want to enjoy the role. You want to have fun. If you're not being true to the performance that you want to give in that room, like you want to enjoy every moment. And often being a weirdo is fun. So I don't know, it's not necessarily being weird for weird's sake, but it's just presenting something that is true to who you are. I would rather go in there knowing that I'm a D&D player and I quilt and I do cross stitch while watching Gardening Australia. Having that as I don't know, something in the back of my mind already sets me apart from the others and allows me to have confidence that when I walk in there, I am going to be different to everyone else. I'm not going to be a cookie cutter of the norm, which means that I can just be honest and deliver on give a show or give a performance that is unique to me.
I mean, cross-stitching while watching Gardening Australia, my heart is a flutter. But anyway, let's move on. So, let's talk more about your writing, which I did just throw in there for fun and giggles. Tell us what's in the works. Talk to us about your writing. What's happening? What's in the draft?
Yeah, I'm working on a couple of things. A couple of years ago, I wrote a web series that's currently in development for production. We're in the process of doing script developments on that in order to get it up to scratch and to do the funding circuit. I'm also working on a play which I wrote last year. So that's a nice little piece that is in development as well. And recently I wrote in 48 hours with a friend a short film, a horror that we're hopefully going to try and produce later in the year when we hopefully, happily have the smallest budget ever on it, because it's just a little fun piece for me and my mates to throw together, have a laugh, get a cabin in the woods, drink a couple of cases of beer and make a horror short about Dungeons and Dragons. So it's just going to be a little riot, that one.
I mean, I kind of need to know what these are about now. I'm more like, just tell me more. What is the web series about? What is the script about? I want to know. What can you give away?
A lot of the inspiration for what I write is from heroes and superheroes as well as fantasy heroes. The web series is, well, I can give you the name. It's called Part-Time Heroes, and it's about a brother and sister who are they're on a hero's journey trying to figure out what it takes to be a hero, especially when they're really shit at it. So I've written season 1 and it's got quite a beautiful ending, and I'm on the way to writing season 2 as well. So there's quite a lot in the pipeline with that one. I wrote that one primarily because there's also in the industry, if you aren't getting cast in roles, then write the roles that you want to play. And so why not write a show where I get to play a wizard who falls in love and gets the dream guy halfway through. And then at the end of the day, him and his sister are tested and tried, and there are sword fights, magic. Why not? Why not have a bit of pizzazz and be just legends on screen? The play that I'm writing is also a hero's journey of sorts. That one is called The Jilted Curse. It's about 3 friends who get cursed. But in order to break the curse, they have to go on a big quest. And that involves lots of pirates and dragons and magic again, a big storm. There is a giant whale and music. What else? There's a lot. Oh, one of the characters gets turned into a dog, which is why it's a puppet show, because I'm going to have a dog puppet. Yeah.
There's 2 stories there, plus Lazer Beak Man, plus everything. I feel like there's a bit of a thing happening here with Homer's Odyssey, the hero's journey. How much research and sort of back work have you done in sort of understanding the hero's journey? Because you've mentioned it a few times now and I'm kind of loving it. Can I get into the nitty-gritty with you about that?
Ooh. Okay. It's going to surprise you that I've never read the book, The Hero's Journey. All of my understanding of the hero's journey, I say it, I've done my research online and I went and found the Wikipedia page of the breakdown of the hero's journey. Don't tell your students that Wikipedia is not a source that you can credit, but I just did. My understanding of hero's heroes and all of that come pretty much just from my fascination with the storytelling form. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. There are so many hero stories in that. And what I do love about the hero's journey is that it is just a broad framework to describe a story. Each individual hero is unique in their own way. So that's what I love as well, is trying to figure out what makes people heroes, like what differentiates one from another, and what really triggers people to give everything they've got. Most of those stories require someone to go through some kind of trial in order to discover who they are. I really find that fascinating on a psychological as well as physical level. It could easily be some block within themselves, a relationship issue. Like, I find all of that to be utterly fascinating as a framework. That's where I'm at right now. Talk to me next year and I might be on some other kind of tangent. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying what I can discover and learn about people just by looking at what heroes do. Dungeons and Dragons is interesting as well because you're often working with playing this tabletop RPG with 5 other people, and they all have different ideas on what their character wants. And so I'm always surprised by what they throw forward. They, in a way, are defining their own journeys. And I find that really interesting, all the different nuances that individuals can have just from their own input to the storyline with Dungeons and Dragons, because that is in a way collective storytelling with the framework of a game.
I agree with you in that I love the psychological element to the hero's journey and the pushing through of that challenge, that mental and physical challenge, or just the mental challenge. What do you think for you is the ideal hero's journey, or the journey that sort of sits with you best?
The one that resonates with me the most when it comes to a hero's journey, and it really comes down to sacrifice. That really pinpoints quite some, I don't know why, but it always makes my heart turn, is when a character gives up something for another character because they've learnt that it's a selfless act. Often that's out of love. Yeah, because of their love for that other character, they will give the world to them. That is often something that really makes me sit back and breathe a little bit and probably take my time to just get my head around, because everyone has a different thing to give up, or a different reason to sacrifice, a different trigger, a different thing to learn that can make them want to do that. What I do like about the idea of sacrifice is that it is given, it's not taken. That's a really beautiful quality that I really appreciate in people that I know as well on a personal level. For my family and for my friends, that's something that I would do for them. And I would hope that they would do that for me. There's something trusting in that. I think that's one of those big qualities that make me believe that every person has the potential to be a hero.
I cannot wait for these stories. You are listening to Talking Sock with One Orange Sock and Drew Wilson. We'll be right back after the break. Make sure you hit subscribe and follow at One Orange Sock Productions on Instagram. More with Drew shortly.
This is Philip Miller.
I'm Richard Bradshaw.
I'm Sue Wallace, and you are listening to
Talking Sock.
Talking Sock Podcast.
A One Orange Sock production.
This is the #1 podcast for puppetry in the country.
Your one-stop shop for all things puppetry arts and practitioners.
The #1 puppetry podcast in Australia.
Follow this podcast.
We believe that podcasts should be advert-free. So if you like what you're listening to, there's a new way to help support our podcast. No monthly subscriptions, just a simple tip to share your kindness and to help us get by. Follow the link in the podcast notes or at oneorangesock.com to buy us a coffee. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening to Talking Sock.
Hello, darlings. This is Ronnie Burkett, and you're listening to Talking Sock, my favorite puppetry podcast.
Welcome back. You are listening to Talking Sock with Pete Davidson and Drew Wilson. We've been talking about Bonraku puppetry and Drew's work in finding that balance between commercial acting and puppetry. But now, Drew, it's time to talk about how you've sustained yourself throughout your time as a puppeteer. And firstly, let's talk about the survival jobs. You've got yourself with many fingers in many pies. Talk to us about what you're doing during COVID-19 and in between gigs to keep yourself afloat.
Yeah, okay. I'm a very busy person. I do like to relax, don't get me wrong. I do the quilting and I do the cross stitch in front of the television, in front of Gardening Australia. Oddly enough, my personal training stuff has kept me sane, really. It was originally as a backup, actually. My parents always believed that you need a backup they told me personally that I need a backup in case acting doesn't work out. My parents said to me...
It's too real. I'm just like, that conversation.
Yeah, no. It's a very real conversation that I think all parents from baby boomers, they have a genuine fear that their actors for children are going to end up probably in a dumpster somewhere. So they said to me, when you want to go back and study medicine, not if, it's a when, that they will pay for my entrance exam. And that really knocked me for six. I was very much aware that having something to fall back on was an important thing to them. So doing the personal training and the fitness stuff was a way to, in a way, appease them. But also, I want to do something that I enjoy. And I do enjoy fitness and I do enjoy the physical side of training and doing all that. So I didn't expect that it would actually ever happen this way. All of my acting jobs are gone for the moment. And I thought when my parents were talking about having something to fall back on, that meant when I give up acting or give up puppetry. That was how I saw it in my mind. I didn't ever think of it actually as when the puppetry gets taken away from you. So I'm incredibly thankful now that it's been realized in a different way, and it has been there because it's really kept me sane. Having people to train regularly kept my head a bit level because it's so easy to downward spiral. This kind of uncertainty hits everyone around you, especially clients, because I don't know, for a lot of people that I train, physical fitness and the regular attendance to that is a mental health thing for them as well. And so when I've got a group of people who are looking to me to maintain that so that they have some semblance of normality in order to keep going, it really pulled me out of a funk and kept me focused on something. This whole Corona thing has really, I'm quite thankful.
I have to ask this question, and it's so self-indulgent, but when your parents said to you, when you go back to medicine, and you said it was like pulling a plug on your certainty, can you talk me through that? Because probably like the cornerstone of what I resent my parents for is that conversation where to go and find a backup job into teaching, because that was what stopped me from auditioning for things like BCA and NIDA and whatnot.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that moment distinctly, and it was a couple of years after I finished drama school. I hadn't yet booked Warhorse, and I'd done a couple of little gigs, but it was me pretty much living in Sydney, check to check, And I get a phone call one night from Mum, and she said, "Your father wants me to let you know that when you want to study medicine, we will pay for the entrance fee." And I laughed it off at the time. I remember laughing and being like, "Oh yeah." But then I had one of the most sleepless nights that I've ever had. I was tossing and turning for quite a bit, and it really knocked me for six that evening. Anyway, I called Mum the next day, and I said to her, you know what you said last night about studying medicine? I said, I appreciate where that comes from. I know you care. I know you love me. And I know all of these things. I need your support as much as possible. I need your support while I do this. I want to do this. I want to try and make this work. And even if I do go study medicine and go and try that avenue, I need you guys to back me right now. And then Mum said, "You're right. Look, I'm never going to speak for your father ever again. He can call you himself next time." It was this moment when Mum she apologized. She did. And strangely enough, only a couple of months later, that's when I booked Warhorse. And ever since then, they have been to every single one of my opening nights for every show that I've ever done. They came to every opening night that I did with Warhorse in each capital city. They flew down to Melbourne to come and see Stormboy. They flew up to Brisbane to see Stormboy. Every other show, they've always been there. So I've never had that conversation with them before until that point. And I think it was a big milestone for us. I love them that they listened to me, and at the same time that I also was able to be honest with them, because it was an important conversation to have. There's such a difference between our generations, and without that conversation happening, then yeah, a lot would have been unsaid for a much longer period of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it was quite a profound and potent moment. And I know they're probably going to listen to this podcast. And Mum and Dad, I love you very, very much.
I will say that I think that is a moment that I personally only thought that I had with my parents. And actually you saying that to me, that you've experienced a similar kind of conversation really, really changes my vision on that for me as a performer and an actor. And you handled it a lot more eloquently than I did, is all I can say. So wow,
Yeah.
that is beautiful. And do you think that Warhorse was sort of vindication from that moment for you and your mum and dad?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And also for myself. I was talking to Mum the other day actually about this, and yeah, I was talking about how we have conversations like this all the time, and I was talking about like Warhorse was really the start of me beginning to trust myself as a performer. I mean, I'd never done puppetry before, but I definitely started to trust myself as a puppeteer as well. So it was the start of me trusting myself as an artist. Up until that point, I think I was a very green. I think from that point on, I was making a lot of I was breaking down a lot of barriers that made me better understand myself as a human as well as an artist.
Talk me through drama school. I want to know what actual drama school looks like, feels like, the experience of drama school is, because, we see popular culture play with this idea of going to drama school. I can reference Fame, both versions of it. The 2009 one was better. Don't judge me. The idea of this performing arts high school or this performing arts college that is all competitive edge and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What is VCA? What is drama school actually like?
Yeah, look, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work. Yeah, you're working with you've got a group of people that you spend all your time with, and all you want to do is just be really, really good actors. The stakes are high as well. You want to be the best you can be. And at the end of the day, you're in an institution that's connected to a university. So you're going to get a mark and you're getting graded, and you've got teachers that you want to impress. So there's a lot of insecurity going around. There's a lot of ego going around, but there's also a lot of fun. You're playing roles that, I would dream to play again today. I played Paris from the Iliad, and I got to be essentially like a catwalk model on stage. Like, it was in this show where there were 10 of us, and we were each characters from the Iliad, and we were dressed in the most incredible costumes, and we all looked bloody good. And I don't know, you get these moments where you're just like, oh yeah, did that. Owned that. And some of the funniest stuff happens in those classes. Voice and physical performance stuff. I mean, my physical performance classes, they were all in the Lecoq style of training. So a lot of mask work with that, the Buffon, as well as the grotesque, going back to neutral mask, we did, and all of those things. And the things that you watch your friends do in those rooms was utterly hilarious. They stick with me. The things that we did made a fool of ourselves in the confines of this safe space. Some of the finest comedy moments that I've seen, and they're more enjoyable as well because we all knew each other so well. That being said, I mean, there was a lot of tension at times. I think there were some qualities within myself, some things that I did during drama school that I'm like, okay, yeah, if I could repeat that, I would definitely not have said that or done that to that person. Look, that's hindsight. I'm a lot older now, and I can look back and say, fuck, I was a dick at times. But look, yeah, that's drama school. It's a little melting pot, a little mixing pot of tension, but joy and youth.
God, I love your honesty. I really do. I really appreciate it. Oh, okay. I'm all honested out. God, it was good. It's time for our segment called The Geek Out, in which my guest and I mention something that has been getting us through social isolation. My Geek Out this week is a board game. It is called Bears versus Babies. My dear friend Kay Yasugi gave it to me. She sent it down from her house in Sydney to my house in Melbourne. And it was the saddest reason why, because she said, I don't have anyone in my house to play this with. And I thought, okay. So I wanted to say to Kay, I love you, Kay, and I wish I could play that game with you. And it's fabulous. And if anyone has seen the game, it kind of looks like your boxed version of the Monster Book of Monsters from Harry Potter. It is literally a furry box. And what you do is you create an arsenal of monsters that are technically bears that you add appendages to in order to attack killer babies in a sort of round robin of crazy attacks. And as a card game, the graphics are fabulous. And my housemates and I played it the other day and we had such fun. And I would highly recommend everyone go and order it on Amazon or whatever it is. It was a Kickstarter campaign. So dang it, love it that for the little guy. And yeah, Drew, what's your geek out this week?
I wish that it was as cool as that. Oh my God. And P.S. I love Kay. Hi, Kay. I think you're amazing. My geek out, I've got so many. I actually started going back to the old school PC video games the other day, and I started playing Diablo 3. Yeah. It's so good.
What's it like going back?
Oh, it's so good. And I think what I love about it is that the premise is so simple, but when you're just killing things, but they're evil. You're killing evil things, lots of evil, demons, possessed ghosts, all these things. But everything that you're killing is evil. And not only that, but it is like utterly gruesome. So it's so satisfying, but it just satisfies all the 12-year-old me that just loved playing that game when I was younger. And the simplicity of just slaughtering demons at this point in time in the world makes more sense to me than what's going on in the greater scheme of things. So I think that's a very bleak view on the world. For a solid week, it just made me happy.
Yeah, and I do feel like there's a part of us, maybe you and myself included in this, that has regressed somewhat during COVID isolation. When you're left to your lonesome thoughts, I went full teenage crazy. I don't know about you, but yeah, you learn about it.
You go to that comfortable place, which is nostalgia. It's an easy place to access, and it's like, grandma's hug. It's a reminder of the good old days.
Oh, I love that. It's like grandma's hug. Oh, Drew, what else is there in the world of puppetry and performing arts that you want to get your hands on?
Well, I mean, there are shows that I'm not doing right now that I want to be doing because of COVID, but yeah, those ones, which are being postponed to next year. So yes. No, what I really want to do, I just watched The Mandalorian, the entire series, and I heard that they're doing season 2. So my dream job would actually be to work on The Mandalorian season 2 or to work on any of those. There's a lot more shows being made that use puppetry. So I want to be on those. They sound fun. They're cool.
God, yeah. See you there.
Yeah.
What I've learned from you during the ever brief interactions that you and I have had is that you're a really good storyteller. And what's a story that you would love to tell if you had the resources or the time?
Ooh, I love Shakespeare, but I'm sick of seeing Shakespeare. And
thank you.
Yeah, because the only time I've ever seen Shakespeare that I really, really enjoy is when I see it in England, actually. There's something about it at the Globe Theatre. I think they just do absolutely superbly. It's often bare bones. I would like to make an entirely puppet version of Midsummer Night's Dream. I think there is a potential for an incredible amount of magic to come to life from that. I don't know what that is, though. I think there's a version where it's quite simple, actually, but reinventing our way of interpreting Shakespearean text without it undermining the power of it. There's a purity in Shakespearean text that I think is so potent and so valuable. And there's also a purity in puppetry that is so tangible when it's achieved on stage, and it's so visceral. And to unite those two together, I think would be an incredible challenge, but worth trying if it can work.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a version of Romeo and Juliet done with puppets. And unfortunately, I think that for that story, it didn't take the form of puppetry and let it go with the Shakespeare text. Whereas I think with Midsummer Night's Dream, you would absolutely have, by virtue of the fact that you have fairies and absurd magic potions to work with and goats' heads on men and things like that. Like it would just work so beautifully. I'd love to say that as well. And I think there is such access to that kind of stuff in Europe. I know that Shakespeare is happening a lot in Europe in puppetry. But you're right about theatre in terms of the UK does Shakespeare damn well. They've gotten good at it. They've really honed that craft. I think the best Shakespeare I've ever seen was Christopher Eccleston did Macbeth at the Royal Shakespeare Company. I think it was at the Stratford-upon-Avon at that really big theatre there. I'll admit to you that for me, as a performer, I met you, and in my head, I was backstage at Stormboy, and I was like, right, how do I become that guy in 5 years? And my assumption, a lot like talent agencies' assumptions, is that this has been an easy road for you in puppetry. And looking back, the journey started after you had already done a science degree and traveled overseas. So I have to ask you the question, what have you learnt on the journey so far? And is there anything you would share as advice to other young and mid-career puppeteers wanting to do what you do?
Well, first, thank you. What have I learned? Trust. Yeah. I think you are enough. People are enough. The journey of becoming an artist or a puppeteer or an actor, you can't do it alone. And you need the support of as many people as possible. You need to foster that support too. So as much as you need them, they also need you. Kindness and loyalty and rigor are really important things to share with people. I suppose I just enjoy doing what I do as much as possible and give myself space to do that. One of the main things that I learned is to trust myself, to trust who I am as a person. Once I did that, then I started enjoying the work more and seeing myself within the work, and as a result was able to be proud of it.
How do you inject your sense of self and that ownership into your performances, characters or stories? How do you think we can elicit that better?
That is a really hard question. How do I inject myself in? I mean, I'm already there. I think that's it. It's like just not getting in the way. Already, I mean, my hands are on the puppet and the writing is my own brain on the page. So if I second guess my choices, then that's how I remove myself from the work.
Okay, Drew. Okay, here's your chance. If you had a chance to say thank you to someone, your hero in puppetry or in your career so far, who would it be and why? I'll settle in for this one.
Oh my God. Who are my heroes in puppetry? Yeah, okay. My really, really wanky answer is my heroes are actually the people that are doing it, that are actually playing with the puppets. Everyone. It's a really difficult thing to let go of ego and work on a piece of work as an artist. I think that's an incredibly profound thing. And my hat goes off to anybody that is willing to work long hours in the industry in order to build a show. So yeah, it's pretty much everyone, because I can't attribute anything to any one person. I haven't had the chance to work with mentors, although everyone I work with I see as a mentor. So the heroic idea of my heroes are the people that I work with, everyone. I'm not being very eloquent with my answer, am I? Especially because I love the hero's story. I love heroes. And I think one of my big things is that I believe everybody has the potential to be one. So yeah, it comes down to everybody, which is such a wanky answer. Hey.
See you doing that thing again where you jump up and down with all that energy of just going, I don't know what the answer is. How dare you ask me this question?
I think that's the beauty of it, is that there is no answer to this question, because I do admire the work that everybody puts in. I admire the efforts that people do. So Tim and Judy were my heroes in Lazer Beak Man, those two in particular, but then everybody else in that team, they all banded together. And yeah, there were really tough times that we had in those seasons, but everyone managed to step up and prove themselves in that show. So I feel like it's more than just one individual that has made an impact on my life. I feel like everybody else that I work with, they have an impact too.
Oh, Drew, I have genuinely, I don't think I've enjoyed an interview more. So thank you for being on the show today. We are out of time.
Oh, my pleasure.
You can find Drew on Instagram at Drew Wilson with an underscore in between Drew and Wilson. Drew is commercially represented by Smith & Jones Management and is on Showcast. Thank you for listening with us today, and make sure you subscribe for more great puppetry arts and practitioner interviews. I have been Pete Davidson, that puppet guy, and we will talk sock again soon.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Now we want to hear from you. Each week, we'll post a series of questions related to every interview. Join the conversation on Twitter at TalkingSockcast. You can help us bring puppet power to the podcasting world by hitting subscribe, liking our socials, and telling your friends. Like us on Instagram at OneOrangeSock Productions, and check out our episode blog at oneorangesock.com. You can support our podcast by pledging to us on Patreon. Your support helps fund our audio mastering, interview transcriptions, and much, much more. Find the link in the podcast notes and earn yourself a shout out on our socials. Head to our website at oneorangesock.com or talk to us on Twitter to see how you can show your support. Our music is composed by Elizabeth Maniscalco, and our cover art is by Chad Barnier. Without them, this podcast wouldn't be possible. We'll be back next week with another great episode here at Talking Sock.